Beck, and back in open session, and we will start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Welcome, everyone. And we'll keep moving right along, and we do have other board members that are wandering around the building, but they will get here. And I do believe we have a modification to the agenda.
Yeah, one modification is supplemental personnel report dated today. Well, it's already on the agenda, so we make a change when it's there. Yeah. Discuss it when we get.
So you figured all that out over there?
We did,
We're
yeah.
good? Okay.
Supplemental personnel report.
Without objection, we'll add the supplemental personnel. And we'll move on to public comment period. Anyone who is in the room and wishes to speak can do so now. Bob's already talked tonight, so he doesn't need to do it. Anyone else wish to speak? You can do that now. Students in from class, you can speak. I mean, this is opportunity. You're on TV, anything you want to report out? But you don't have to. Oh, well.
I'm just going to do a shout out then. The government teachers had a presentation for all the seniors about a court case, a woman who, as a teenager, pursued a Supreme Court case to be able to protest the Vietnam War in school. And if you want to talk about engagement, this was engagement. This was an entire auditorium of students that were just hanging on every word and asked amazing questions. And kudos to, I think Ms. Augustine was pretty much in charge, and Ms. Schenk and Mr. Highland, and it was absolutely fabulous, so shout out to them.
Very good.
Just to add to that, she was also at Boynton Middle School the previous day, and Cindy Kramer brought her in, and then she spoke at Ithaca College Thursday night.
Tinker, Ms. Tinker. Yeah,
And she spoke at ICSD.
Yes.
yes.
Wow, got around. Excellent. If nothing else, if no one else wishes to speak, we'll move on and student reps, and we'll start with LECS.
Thank you. So yeah, we had Mary Beth Tinker come to our school as well, and it was an incredible opportunity to hear her. I personally am involved with mock trial and moot court, and I remember 2 years ago we used her case as case law in one of our debates, and to be able to meet her was really amazing and really inspiring. She talked a lot about students' rights, and she talked to the constitutional law class first period, and then second period she talked to the whole school at the all-school meeting. And so it was really great to have her, and we're really thankful we had that opportunity.
So, over the weekend, there was the Hugo Sound Festival, and one of the students, senior at ACS, interviewed the lead singer of the Ex-Ambassadors for his senior project. He was an LICS alum, and I don't know, the Ex-Ambassadors have become like really big, and I think it was really important to him. Projects have finally begun at ACS. All the students get their own kind of experiential
learning kind of thing with project splits, and committees have begun as well. And also trips that are full year family groups. I don't know if this terminology might not make sense to everyone, but basically LACS has spring trips, and when we go far away places, it's made a family group, so we meet for the entire year and have to start fundraising early. And so some of them have started fundraising, such as the disaster relief trip has started by doing fall yard work, and especially in light of the many hurricanes that have happened, which we'll be going down to places like Texas and Florida, and also to New Orleans to still repair the damage done by Katrina. We really want to get going on the fundraising so we can get there in the spring. So if any of you want some yard work done, you can contact me after the meeting and we can set that up.
Just make sure I got the name down, that's all. It's Right, it's right.
It's right there.
Right in the agenda. You'll be hearing from Sean. Ithaca High.
Thank you. So last Tuesday, class meetings were held, which is the first time that class meetings have actually been held in September in nearly a decade. So it was really great to meet like all the classmates together. So the freshmen discussed goal setting as a tool for success for their first year of high school and their many upcoming years. And then they also discussed their class officer elections, which will be held in October. The sophomores talked a lot about fundraising as well as ideas for fundraising. The juniors discussed prom ideas such as themes and venues as well as fundraising ideas. An example, there will be either a tailgate or a chicken barbecue next week before the homecoming game. Then the seniors discussed fundraising as well as potential senior events. They brainstormed ideas such as the blacklight dance, a throwback dance, bowling nights, and movie nights. They also held a fun t-shirt raffle, and people won some t-shirts, and they talked a lot about graduation information. As I already said, the homecoming football game will be next Friday, October 6th. This will be preceded by Spirit Week. We have a lot of really great ideas such as Twin Day, dress like your favorite teacher day, and whoever does like best spirit wins a prize. And this will kind of end on Friday with, of course, the game, as well as a pep rally during 8th period. And pep rally is usually pretty fun. There will be a lip sync battle as well as the band will perform. And then that following Saturday there will be a homecoming dance. Also, a bunch of clubs have started now that we're a few weeks into school. Clubs such as Model UN, Mock Trials, Science Olympiad, Swiss, Sexuality and Gender Alliance Club, Green Team, K-Pop International Club, Habitat for Humanity, and so many more.
So actually this year there was a new club called Bio Builders Club, which meets on Thursdays. And this club is basically, it's a club about like genetic engineering and like, DNA editing. And it's really nice to see this club come to IHS because it's like really high-level science, and there are a lot of students, as people like me, who are like interested in like this kind of stuff and want to pursue a career in like genetics. So it's really cool to see this club finally come to IHS, and it's actually partnered with Cornell, so it's pretty official. And as it was mentioned before, Mary Beth Tinker came to speak last week, and I found it, for me at least, it was really awesome and inspiring because it was the first time that I saw someone who was so young who was able to like make a difference in their community. And I think a lot of students found it inspiring because we haven't been really exposed to those kind of things before, but because she was so young but she was able to make a difference in her community, it really spread a positive message throughout our high school.
Very good. Thanks, Ithaca High. Board responses, anyone? Pat?
I'd just really like to thank students from both schools for giving us a rundown on their activities, the fundraising, the new clubs. I love that we have genetic engineering. Give us a heads up if anything goes horribly awry. I just, for people who weren't at Mary Beth Tinker's, one of her presentations, that she and her older brother and another student were suspended by their high school principal in, was it 1968, Sean, for wearing black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. And the ACLU took that case up to the Supreme Court and established the right of even school children to engage in non-disruptive acts of civil disobedience, and that it's an incredibly important free speech right. As I said to my husband on the way home, I bet we're going to see a lot of free speech in the Ithaca City School District, and that's a good and healthy sign of democracy. So thank you.
Other comments? Anyone? Are we good? All right, very good. Thanks, Pat. And move on to consent agenda.
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
Second by Pat. Are we looking at anything that we should note, other than we've all read it and we've seen it? Sean, go ahead.
Quick, I wasn't at finance, just any word on the extraneous material, the surplus stuff. It's going to sale, or we don't know what we're doing with it yet.
Goes to sale.
there was a list of items, correct?
Pages, 8 pages.
Yeah, I saw it. Typically, technology, et cetera, old stuff.
This time it happens to be all.
All old tech. So
Yep.
if you can re-engineer it through artificial intelligence to do something else, that's great, but I'm not sure that...
Even some old cell phones.
Anything else? Move seconded, all in favor? That's not everyone. It's Pat, Rob, Eldred, Chris, Moira, Brad, and Ann. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Would be Sean. And we are 8 tonight. Nicole is absent. So anything we do, it still takes 5 votes. So let's move on. And board work session reports. For those of you who are new, this is not the only time we meet. Basically, every Tuesday we are either meeting in public session, as we are tonight, or in public work sessions, and there are multiple work sessions that happen on those off Tuesday nights. And we'll just go down through the list. And Ann, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, we've been working on a couple things. We are going to be going to the NISBA conference.
Do it first.
Oh, actually,
No, go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, we're going to the
No, I
NISBA
jumped.
the NISBA conference, and they have a bunch of various propositions that we get to vote on there, the resolutions. So we spent today's kind of discussing those and seeing how they would impact the district, if those are ones we were in favor of or not. And we'll put those out there for everybody to see, because if they're an electronic version, and see what comes down, so feel free to weigh in. We finally have a meeting set up with our state senator, Senator Omar, for November. So that is progress. And the other thing we're working on is a letter to Congressman Reed, which we'll do a little bit more about later in the meeting.
Go ahead, Brad.
Facilities.
Facilities, yes. Then finance, if you want to follow
You
up.
want me to just roll?
You can combine both.
Okay.
Just go through.
Well, facilities, we're looking at, we're going to be talking about water quality coming up. That's later in the agenda today. Spent some time on that. It's been 10 years since our last bond issue. And we're starting to look at what's next for the district. That's actually going to start with some demography look. With our having 200 more students here than last year, we thought maybe demography would be a good place to start to see whether that's a blip on the radar or if that's going to become an ongoing trend of increase. So looking at that, and then we'll be looking at where to go next with the facilities. As you know, we every 5 years get an engineering survey of all our facilities. You can never do everything that's on that list. It's exhaustive, and it's $200 million and isn't going to happen, but we will look at the priority items there and the priority items that Dr. Brown brings forward for advancing the learning here in the district. So we'll be combining those and looking at that. So that's what's going to tie us up for the year. On the finance side, the budget's always an ongoing process. We are again scheduling to discuss it with the department every month and look at them as part of the budget process. So it's ongoing, goes all year round. Always happy to have people come and join us for those discussions. They are public meetings, and happy to have you come.
And thanks, Brad. And the building condition survey is required by the state over 5
Right.
years. It's not something that
Oh, no,
is
we
just
didn't
done.
make it up. No,
Right.
it's required,
Right.
and we do use it. It's
That's
just
right.
that the way the state has them drawn up, I mean, anything that gets to be 15 years old, they want you to replace it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, we don't quite do that.
Thanks, Brad, for doing 2. And HR is Chris, and all heck was breaking loose when Chris. But go ahead, Chris.
And all heck breaks loose.
Never miss a meeting. I think
So,
that's
and
awesome.
I'm accompanied by Moira and Pat, who are more than capable of getting things done in HR and taking the lead and going crazy. No. So this year we have some new focuses. Mike Simon has taken on the daunting task of streamlining, evaluating our programs, all our paper forms, and getting them digitized, really eliminating any redundancy. I don't want to steal your thunder. Do you want to chime in with anything else that I'm probably missing?
We killed our first paper form.
Yes.
Last week.
Very good.
Killed our first paper form. Also, just looking at responsibilities and processes and who owns them, which is really well needed in our HR realm. So that's going on. We're also looking at building structure and who's in our buildings and what does that look like as far as years of service experience, different things, so we can look, what we're going to be needing down the road. Just getting an understanding of each of our buildings. Then we're always looking at tenure reviews, and we're looking at streamlining that process. I believe at the last HR meeting when I read the minutes, we've got a new review form we're working on. What else did I have there? New tenure review template and also contract negotiations. And we've constantly looked at this, but I think we're going to make some real good headway this year at just the hiring process and streamlining that. So a lot going on in HR.
Thanks, Chris. And Moira, curriculum has met, Moira, correct?
Curriculum
You
has
have met, right?
We met not on a Tuesday because we were originally scheduled for our usual slot the first Tuesday of the month, but there were other things going on, so we ended up meeting on a Monday. But the committee members were all there. We had a lively discussion about what the curriculum committee should be focusing on, because as we've all experienced, the curriculum committee is an important charge of the school board, but exactly how to be effective and appropriate as a board when you're dealing with the enormity of what we mean by curriculum is a real struggle. So we had a lively discussion about that. I think we have decided we're going to focus on is looking at inclusion and culturally responsive teaching. And to have that a sharp lens, I urged everybody who participates in the committee to, send a flag on the field when we seem to be straying from our focus, getting into the weeds. We may have some, signals where we can call time out.
Yellow card.
Into the weeds, yeah, right. Because it's very, very easy to get, sidetracked because curriculum is such an enormous task. But Dr. Brown and Liddy Coyle and Laura Evans, I'm going to be meeting with them, and we're going to be trying to really define a vision for inclusion. And then how we can assess how we're doing in measuring up to our vision.
Thanks, Moira. And policy.
Policy had its first meeting of the year. We spent the entire meeting talking about the policy that's on the agenda for tonight, policy 5405. The health and wellness policy is the first reading. We understand this is a federal mandate, and we're trying to comply with some guidelines, and so that's why this is an extended policy. We are hoping soon to actually be in the 5,000 series. It's only been a 2-year jump for us to be in the 4,000 series. And the good thing is, moving forward, we'll be far more organized in our policy review, though giving the board a heads up that the 5,000 series is students. And so I imagine that all of those policies will elicit some lively conversations, and hoping that our student reps in particular would participate as we get to some of those policies that directly impact you most specifically. And so more to follow. Next month we meet August 3rd, please be August, please. We meet October 3rd is our next meeting, so we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Sean. We do so look forward to the 5,000 series.
Who are you telling?
Just because it's the 5,000
That's
series.
right.
So thanks, everyone. And Dr. Brown, I seem to wanted to flow right into the work session reports instead of doing you first. So I like having you report now, I think it flows better. So,
Thanks for the opportunity.
so Dr. Brown, here you go.
I appreciate this opportunity. Just one thing. I'm hoping to invite the board, staff, and community to join me in supporting a community partner, the Youth Bureau. I can't name the number of collaborations and partnerships we have with the Youth Bureau. Their facilities are our facilities are their facilities in many ways, and particularly around Cass Park. Many of our student athletes have competed there and will continue to compete there for many, many years to come. And right now, I hope folks realize there's a campaign to upgrade that wonderful facility. So I'm inviting folks to join us in supporting that campaign. I rarely do this in this session, but I think it's important for us to know that it's happening. There's a special event this Saturday I'm hoping folks can go to. I think it's called Celebrate Cass. This Saturday night, I think Maura knows the folks are going to be playing. There's a special event there. So I don't have the website with. I think it's www.friendsoftheIYB/Cass. I'm just asking folks to just go out and know about the many opportunities that we can support this community treasure, which is the Youth Bureau and that facility. So just that one item. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. So let's move on to school district business, and we're going to talk about water quality.
And we want to invite
Again.
Ms. Verbo out.
Paul?
No need to be alone when we're discussing water.
You're never alone when we're discussing water. This is an overdue community update, and Paul has been working on this from the very beginning. I have been working on this a little less time, but never felt like I missed a step because Paul was able to bring me right up to speed with everything. So that was really fantastic to have a partner to be able to work with all of the folks that have investments in this project, from the county health department to EPA to community members. We've done a few updates here and there, but again, I don't think we ever do enough communication on topics this important. So I really appreciate people's patience for us to be able to gather this data in a timely manner, in the sense of waiting for decisions to be made and approved. And so we really appreciate the understanding of the way that this process has been unfolding. So Jen, we'll go right to the second slide. So Paul did not approve these images, and so they may not be the ones that look exactly like the ones that we have in our school, but I'm sort of a very simple-minded person when it comes to things of maintenance of facilities, unlike my colleague here to my right. So, when we start talking about things like bubblers and, the water coolers and things like that, I get confused very easily. So we will have this on the website as a reference, a group of slides. We'll put this in the water area. Paul, I'm sure I did complete, disrespect to the facilities and the things that we have in our facilities. But essentially, we're going to be talking about today a few items here that have been sort of coming up over and over again in the water conversation. So we'll be talking about sink and bubbler combos that are in most of our classrooms. And so it's the sink part that has a faucet with the bubbler, meaning you could drink from it. Okay, there's like a water fountain. So that's also called fountain bubbler. I guess they're interchangeable. Maybe there's some sort of technical term that I'm missing, but to me, we're going to interchange them.
Great.
Just below that, it's the bottle filler fountain combination. So notice this is the bubbler and faucet. So this is a bottle filler where you can actually put a reusable bottle or maybe even a plastic cup right underneath and you can fill. And then there's also the faucet that you can drink from. This unit is filtered. Okay, this unit is not filtered. This unit, it's rare to find one of these where there's actually not some sort of filtration piece to that. And so we'll talk about that when we get to it, because that, shockingly, has been a little bit problematic when it comes to trying to test water if there's a filter in between where you test and where the water comes into that unit. So that's been causing us a little bit of issues in terms of getting approval. But we'll talk about that when we get there. This is a little bit hard to tell, and I don't think the words really matter because I probably may not even be able to pronounce them anyway. But this is essentially sort of the underlying the sink kind of operations, right? So all the piping, all the feed lines, all the shut-off valves, I'm doing, right, Paul? It's all technical. I'm going right there. And so this stops here at the shut-off valve, but there's actually feed lines that would go to the wall or into the wall. And so when we talk about the replacement of those things, we're going to be talking about all of the sort of network of plumbing underneath the stop valve, and then also the feed lines that go into the wall. This is just a classic traditional old water fountain. Although some of our buildings, I think, still have the porcelain with the sort of knob thing that you turn that is kind of, shaped to your fingers.
Old school.
That's right, it's old school, it's old school. I do appreciate that, except I've noticed that, oftentimes kids would put their mouths on those, so I don't appreciate it. These they can have coolers in them, and sometimes they can have filters in them, but typically we don't see them in school districts. But usually they're cooled water, so just so you know that. And then we have I'm sure you're used to seeing these certified water coolers, which we hope we have plenty of all throughout the district, which essentially served lots of purposes. It helped us quell the fears about the water that we were drinking. It helped give us some time to be able to design an implementation and remediation plan. And it really is a way that we could sort of offer certified drinking water. We've put this out to bid. We've gotten probably the best cost possible in all of our buildings so that it's accessible to all when drinking water was necessary. Okay? So those are the definitions of churn. So we're just going to move on now to the action plan, and this is where I'm going to really sort of look to Paul, because this will be his team, and he'll be managing this. I just want to remind folks that there is a different action plan for both Caroline and Enfield than we would have for all of the other buildings, mainly because we are the water operators for Caroline and Enfield, because they are not on municipal water. Okay, they have a well, and we manage that. We have been managing that from the beginning. We check that water, we chlorinate that water. I mean, we have to do certain tests for it. And so there's a different level of scrutiny and a different level of regulation when we are water operators of systems versus when we're getting municipal water into our buildings. So that's why you're going to see there will be 2 slides for the action plan for Caroline and Enfield, and then there'll be 2 slides for the action plan for the remainder of the buildings in the district. And it's pretty simple, and so again, Paul, please chime in if I'm missing anything. But through a number of facilities committee meetings, a number of meetings vetting the ideas that came from facilities to the Tompkins County Health Department, who essentially is sort of our regulator, the one who really approves the decisions that we make. We have really decided that replacing all faucets, shut-offs, feed lines, that little diagram that I showed you all the way back to the wall, will occur in the next few weeks in all classrooms, nurses' office, kitchens, and faculty rooms. So anywhere where water would be potable, that we could potentially use it for drinking purposes. And we've been working with a consultant named Labella. They've been fantastic. We compared sort of their estimates of the work versus just doing it in-house, using state contract, purchasing all of the equipment and supplies that way. And so we see that we'll probably be able to replace all of those fixtures in all of those classrooms and other rooms for about $15,000 in both locations. So that's a total. Paul has worked with his team of maintainers. We have a number of plumbers on staff. For those of you that don't know, we have electricians, we have HVAC specialists, we have plumbers, carpenters, and so we feel that of the team of, we have how many, like 8 or 10? 8 people?
We have
10 people. We feel that 5 of them, with the supervision of the maintainer, who is the lead plumber for the district, could do this work with some good training and good monitoring over the course of the next 6 weeks. There's about 100 fixtures when we include the nurses' offices and the faculty rooms. And we'll be doing that work beyond their normal routine, right? So we'll be doing that in the evenings and then on the weekends. So, 6 weeks will take us into, let's see, November, mid-November, and so we'll have that all replaced and ready to go. Jen, if you don't mind the next slide. Of course, anytime you do the replacement of any of the fixtures, you rip out anything, you replace it with something new, you do any kind of remediation, we really want to make sure that whatever we did has results that are below the action level set by the EPA, which is 15 parts per billion. PPB. And so anything that we do, once we do the comprehensive replacement project in both of the buildings, we will have staff trained here at Ithaca City School District. They've gone through the process of learning how to do the testing, which was some of the things that we learned in the beginning stages. We want to have the same people, consistent process, knowing, how much water do we let go before we put the bottle underneath or not. And it has to be consistent in every single fixture. So our folks here at Ithaca have been trained for this, and they will be doing the testing. That testing is very prescribed. In fact, the lab, Microbac, is the company that we use. They also sort of give us all the tools to do that and tell us how to, put the dates on it, the timing, how we did it, what the draw looks like, seal it, and then those will all be labeled and then taken to Microbac. And Microbac, who has done the testing result analysis every single step of the way, will continue to do this. We had, those of you that have been sort of watching this unfold, you probably remember that Microbac got pretty backed up there for a while. They were overutilized because of the concern about lead in the water, and there were new testing regulations that went out to all public schools. And so they're a little bit slower now. People seem to have tested and gotten a handle on things, tested and doing remediation, and that's where we are. So we feel that Microbac will turn these things around very quickly. And as you can see, we're going to follow the same protocols that were followed in the past. We'll be posting those to our website, all testing results. We also will upload them to the system that the Department of Health uses, which is called HERDS. Paul, you might know what that stands for. Okay, good. I don't know. So we both failed the test. It's totally okay. And then the second bullet there, as you can see, if we have outlets that test below the oxygen level of 15 parts per billion, there is currently signage pretty much on all of the fixtures right now, just saying this is for hand washing only. And once we can confirm that our remediation efforts have actually resulted below the oxygen level, those signs can then be taken down, and that water then can be used for hand washing, drinking, washing dishes, doing science projects, whatever it might be, and that will be there in the classrooms ready to go. If those outlets test above the oxygen level, the 15 parts per billion, obviously we would keep the signage there, and then we have to come back together with the board at facilities committee and determine the next stage of remediation. All of the things that we've described thus far is what's called point of usage. So they're actually where the water's coming out into the classroom or into the hallway. And so that's sort of where we're focusing our efforts on. There are other remediation strategies that are beyond that, but we're going to be trying to do that.
Just for my own benefit and trying to remember, we are not replacing bubblers in the classroom with the sink, correct?
That is correct.
So that has not changed. So
that is correct.
The sink will be replaced with just a faucet.
That's right. So the bubbler in the classroom has not been used now for over a year. We've actually created new behaviors where anyone that wants water, you go out to the hallway, you go to the certified bottle that is there, the water cooler. And you get your water. And teachers have sort of, worked this into their daily schedules, and they can utilize that. The sinks will remain that they have sort of a bubbler availability there, but we're going to cap those for now, and we're going to see how this remediation goes, because if the water is potable there, and we can also replace the faucets, the fountains in the hallways, and I'll get to that in just a second, then those two places, per state education mandates, we have water sufficiently placed all throughout the buildings. And then slowly we'll be taking back those water cooler units that we have all throughout the buildings that have the cup waste and all that right now that are certified water.
But typically, a child will not be drinking out of a faucet.
They probably would not be, placing.
Behavior has changed.
That's right, but the behavior has changed.
There's no bubbler. It's likely if you're going to fill up a container, it's going to be out in.
That's right. That's right. The bottle filler / water fountain combo, or a water fountain.
But can be used for other sort of reasons in the classroom.
That is correct.
Thanks.
That is correct. So that's right now Caroline and Enfield, and that's the most immediate strategy that we have taking place in the next few weeks. We will move on now to the other buildings, And if you notice with Caroline and Enfield, we didn't talk a lot about what's happening in the hallways in terms of those water fountains, and I do want to just show that for a moment, and that is intentional. The action plan for the rest of the schools, these are all buildings then that are on municipal water. So they are still regulated, but at a different type of level than Caroline and Enfield. And so we're going to be doing remediation efforts that are similar to the Caroline and Enfield, but it'll just be sort of staged a little bit slower, and it will be over the course of the rest of the fiscal year. So then that way we can have our maintainers first focus on Caroline and Enfield, then move on to Northeast and South Hill. Those were two that had some of the higher episodes of parts per billion in terms of the action level testing. And then we'll move on to Cuba Heights and Bell Sherman, both the large building and then the annex. And then that should probably take us through to the end of the fiscal year. And obviously, everybody knows when we're doing the budget, we budgeted close to about $180,000 for water remediation. I wish it was $1 million, but we don't need it. And so we will do all of the other buildings then post July 2018 again with this plan. So a lot of the faucets in many of these places are on, and they actually have tested well below the action level. But we really are committed to sort of replacing all the feed lines and any of the plumbing, because we really want to make sure that we just start fresh and we can have brand new testing results. The pilot, the second sort of set of bullet points there, we've been working with the Tompkins County Health Department. They have a higher level of regulation than most county departments, actually all
other counties.
health departments in the state. And so everything that we do must be vetted. Everything that we do must be vetted. Before I get to that, we'll take a question.
Okay, I actually have a couple of questions. This is the first time that I've heard people talk about the water on a board, because I have not been on the school board before, but I was just wondering, I remembered that the testing was going on a long time, and you said that much of the water was tested and is still being tested. And I was wondering if it was found, I don't know if you can tell me this or not, but if it was found that there was lead in the water that we've been drinking for a really long time.
Yeah, Paul, do you want to
All the
take?
results are on the website.
Yeah, so
For all the buildings by point.
absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so if you go, we can probably show you the link on the website right after this presentation. Jen could take us there, and then I can show you exactly where to find those results, because I think that that's a really important question for you to be able to see. And yeah, there are, obviously the way you measure water is parts per billion, okay? The EPA, so they have set a standard of 15 parts per billion as the action level. Anything below that, right, is actually what they consider to be an acceptable, non-actionable level, okay? Notice I did not use the word safe, right? I said it's an acceptable, non-actionable level. Everything above 15 parts per billion, right, that's by sort of the regulations that we work under, that you have to do some sort of remediation, especially when we're the water operator. And it's a certain number of fixtures have to be above that threshold for it to be actionable. It just doesn't have to be 1 or 3. You actually take the number of places that you tested, and there's a ratio that's calculated. And then that's when we take action. What we decided as a district here is that we're going to remediate all of it, even if there's a little bit, if it was well below the action level, or just lingering on the action level, or well above. Mainly because we have found that a lot of the issues with the leaching of the lead in our water is around the fixtures and the solder that's been used in those, in the pipes and right, near the fixtures themselves. So the water itself, the water that's coming into the buildings, the municipal water is tested all the time. And we test our water in Caroline and Enfield. But what we're finding, it's a point of usage issue, that's where a lot of the leaching is occurring of the lead.
And the amounts of lead that were in the places where the amounts of lead were highest, did that affect the students who were drinking that water at all?
I mean, it really varied. So there was like one that was exceptionally high, and it was in the boiler room of the custodial closet. There was one that was a bathroom sink. I could not tell you, and this was in an elementary school. So kids, when they're thirsty, get water from lots of places. Could a kid put their head under this, and get it there? Sure. So there were some in classroom facilities, art sinks. There was a few fountains here and there that tested above the action level. So again, we'll show you where those data points are. We have data. We did beyond what was expected of us from the state in terms of testing. So you could actually go point by point with maps in each of the buildings to see where those testing results were.
Thank you so much for answering
You're
my
so
questions.
welcome. You're so welcome. I'm glad you asked.
Can I just add one thing? Is
Sure,
that
Ann.
one of the things that we learned was that there's different ways to test it. And one of the reasons this process has taken a long time is it took a long time to decide what was the process. And so some of those original tests were done when they hadn't run the water or after the water had been sitting in the pipe for quite a long time, like over summer vacation.
And not just
Yeah.
us deciding how to
Yeah.
test it. The federal government
That's right.
revising the lead and copper rule and the state health department
That's right.
adopting. So this hasn't just been our waiting.
You're leaving a Lovewood County Health Department?
Well, I'm trying not to.
And many will say that the highest risk to, if you're saying affecting children, the highest risk is frankly lead paint in older homes. And older fixtures in older homes is really what is a child exposed to at any time during when they're little, basically. Right. So, but water's been tested consistently, and it was a testing that showed there were some outliers, basically, and frankly, we're trying to figure out which faucets were in which building, and it became obviously more of an issue, not only nationally but certainly locally, and so that's why there's been certified bottled water in every building in this district for up to 2 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
While we work through it.
Right.
And Matt has been talking about the fixtures that are essentially outside the wall, and it's always a question of what's inside the wall. And so there's many different ways to try to address the issues. So
on this slide, just that last point there, the county health department allowed us to pilot one bottle filler fountain combination in BJM and in Bell Sherman Annex. And I think there was probably some discussion as to why those were chosen. I think that most of the fountains there were not above the action level. And essentially, the county has told us any fountain, any water fountain in a hallway that is above the action level, they will never approve a filtered bottle filler water fountain combo, because the filter gets in the way of the testing of the water, and so therefore you cannot guarantee the accuracy of that test due to potentially the filter, hiding or masking a result that could be true to the water. Does that?
It does, but so they said they will actually never, or this pilot will?
No, they will never. So they allowed us to do 2 of these in one building, one in another, right now. And so Jen, if you don't mind going to the next slide.
And was that the same way they allowed them to be installed in Lansing and Trumansburg?
Well, that's so we meet with them monthly, and so I have a 13-year-old daughter. We go to a lot of schools just because she's busy and competing or doing whatever. And I mentioned, I said, gee, I'm wondering if that's the same sort of level that you're holding everybody else to. And they sort of looked at me puzzled, saying, oh no one else has these. And I said, oh yes, they do. And so actually, I think Dr. Brown, the group of superintendents, directors of facilities, myself, there is actually right now a draft document, and it's a guidance document for the installation, maintenance, testing, and replacement of filters for bottle filler water fountain combos. Upon approval of that document with feedback from the constituents in Tompkins County, that guidance document will then become final. That will then be delivered to all schools in Tompkins County, and that will essentially be the document that we must utilize to replace any hallway and or if classrooms have them, we don't have any, water fountains with bottle filler / water fountain combos that have filtration systems to them.
So they ended up treating the Ithaca City School District just different than other school districts in the county. They didn't enforce any rules on the others, and I just want to be clear.
I don't know if there's intentionality to it, because they've been
I
a really
understand,
good
but they
partner.
didn't
They've been a
enforce anything.
fantastic
But they
partner.
didn't enforce anything.
I think that it caught up. I think knowledge caught up to them, after the fact.
So because we asked,
Right.
we asked permission instead of forgiveness.
But they were immediately responsive. I think the next month when we brought that to their attention, they had a draft document ready for us.
But
So
I'm confused because if they're putting together this action plan that would have a guideline for a proper filtered bottle filler combination, that would imply that that would down the line be permitted, right?
that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So they allowed us the pilot in 2 places,
Is that installed now?
One of the two are.
Okay.
Yep.
and that's at BJM.
And did you have to test it?
Actually, no, we haven't, it's not operational because we had to submit a maintenance plan for the filtration of it and
As
for
part
the
of the
upkeep as part of the pilot program
Okay.
for the health department.
All right.
So we designed that ourselves, and now what they'll do then is tell us essentially what we sort of went through that process to look
Okay.
like. So I think they learned from our installation and working with us to develop that guidance document.
Excuse me, is there a reason you chose BJM and Bell Sherman? And what is that? And also, ACS decided to get rid of our little teeny plastic cups to stop
Yes.
our waste, and now all our students are changed their behavior, as you said, to bringing water bottles and filling them up in the cooler, and that seems like having that behavior of filling up water bottles would be a good reason to get one of the bottle fillers with
Right.
specially
No, that's
filtered
where we're
water.
headed.
Yeah, I was why did you choose BJM and
Yeah.
Sherman?
I think in those 2 schools, I mean, I don't know, Paul, if you want to speak to it, but it was the testing results that was really driving.
And as Amanda mentioned before, part of the requirement was that it not be above the action level. We had 2 buildings, one of them was built in 1923 and the other one was built in 1932. And some of those fixtures, while they're not from 1932, are pretty old fixtures. I mean, we still had the porcelain ones at Bell Sherman, and the other ones at BJM were not too far behind as far as that style. And so those are the 2 ones that we chose to replace them.
Okay.
And then as far as the water bottles go, I know that another partner that we haven't mentioned is the Green Team. And so the Green Team, there's a district level Green Team that also then works in each of the buildings. And one of the things that they're trying to focus on this year is exactly what you talked about, is how do we have sort of the idea of sustainability around, utilizing fountains, faucets, bottle fillers with sustainable practices versus waste, right? Which is those plastic cups, which is a nightmare for our custodians as well. And just, for our trash removal. It's just something that we don't want to continue doing. So I know a lot of buildings like LACS have sort of done, moved on to the practice of getting kids to bring the bottle, filling those up, having them near their desk. And so LACS is not alone in that endeavor.
Sorry, should I go? It's a related question. Last question. Have other schools, I know LACS, when we had little plastic cups, we made a point of really trying to recycle them and put them in these huge recycling bins, so then we wouldn't just be throwing them away, and I was wondering if that was an effort made at other schools as well.
Yes, it is. I mean, short and simple answer, it is. And we've become more aware of it as we switched over. Originally, they attempted to go with paper ones, and the manufacturer didn't supply those any longer. So we've been experimenting with different size containers. But yes, that is a practice we've asked our custodians to do.
I'll just reiterate that this is a conversation us as board liaisons, different schools have been hearing and working on for a couple of years. We're all very much aware, almost all, I assume all of us are environmentally conscious as well, so we're aware of this. It's also an expectation where I can't expect students to bring their own water container and have that cost, so I have to provide something for all folks as well, but we're trying to work through that. I just want to address something. I want to make sure that we didn't misanswer Ann's question. It's entirely possible that the health department will say to us that we still can never put bottle filtration systems in place and points of usage that tested over the limit. That's possible.
if it tested over the limit, they will never allow us to do it.
That's the,
Yeah.
so that's the answer I want to make sure you had.
Okay, so as a budgetary item, going forward, for now until forever, we will be using bottled water?
No, it's,
I don't know, I wouldn't draw that conclusion at all.
No.
You gotta hear what's being
Okay.
said. You got a building that's got 20 fountains
Oh, I see
in
what
it.
you're saying, yeah.
In the hallway.
And 2 of them tested
That's right.
over.
That's
You
right.
can replace 18.
At those 2, that's right.
Okay,
With
those,
The
okay.
other 2, you can never put that type in. We
you can
could
put regular-
put a regular fountain in.
We could, we could,
Replacing
and
the
test it.
piping.
Without
and test it
filtration.
That's interesting,
And see if
yeah.
it then works.
And then I'd be curious to know, like down the line, once that's tested for a few years, could you go to a bottle filler? But I wouldn't push it right
Let's
now.
not start now.
Quite frankly, I really just want to make sure that we have
Yep.
fixtures that are
But
below
this
the
is all
actual
doing it
level.
in, in an order, in order to keep the testing clean, so that we know we're providing clean water.
Which actually is a follow-up question I have about the testing, because I think one of the things is, right now, we're doing a lot of testing, but when this first came up, we were doing, the testing on like a certain kind of schedule, but it wasn't like at the board level, we wouldn't have heard the results. So what's the process going forward for those, is it through the county health department, that you're reporting up to them, or to us, or what will it?
You want to speak to that, Paul?
The normal lead and copper rule testing, we will still continue to do that in-house. That's just for 2 sites. That's for where we're the water operators, that's Enfield and Caroline.
But where would the information go once you've done
For
the,
that, the information goes directly to the health department.
will the board be in the?
Yes.
And we'll post, I think the practice of posting to the website moving forward is just going to be part of what we do. And then in the other buildings, Paul, do you want to just describe the testing there just briefly about why those, or how that's different?
Well, we're not legally bound as we are as water operators at Enfield and Caroline to do the testing in those buildings. So that testing will occur solely based on the new installations that we put in. And so that's a one-time testing for that, the immediate testing after we install them.
So then it just
And then-
presumed it's okay?
Well, we can also always implement, and we've had that brief conversation with the health department, that we can implement our own testing procedure, which would really, in my mind, duplicate what we do already at Caroline and Enfield.
Quick. The feeder lines in the 2 areas in which we're now responsible for the water, how long do those go? What do they connect to in Caroline and Enfield?
When we refer to feed lines, we're talking about, actually, I can explain it, at Enfield, where we had one of the sinks that came back extremely high. What we did, we started by replacing just the faucet itself. Still had high readings, then we moved away from that, and then to the feed lines, which come from underneath the faucet, to the main line, which runs directly to the wall. Those aren't extremely long at all, and what happens is, we found that every time we would remove, so the feeder lines we replaced, the faucet we replaced, we still got some readings that were above. So then we went to the brass shutoff and found that the brass shutoff, we're gonna replace that, and once we replaced that, it was almost negligible for the lead. So we just go directly to the wall, so really the feed lines are relatively short, and the shutoffs are usually right below the sink.
So that's sort of an overview of the action plan for the schools. We'll have this again, as I said, posted on the website. And after I just review this, Jen, we can just do a quick little reminder of where to go on the website and find those test results, because I think a lot of people will want to have a reminder of where those are. We will continue to meet monthly with the Tompkins County Health Department, essentially until they release us and we, sort of have met the expectations in terms of the partnership of getting this all under control and moving forward. We're continuing to review the report from our consultant firm, Labella. That's pretty close, but there's definitely some just wording and how far back do we want to go. We want to include testing from 2005 or not, so we're just sort of working on that. We need to always do a better job of communication to the community. Funding, we want to make sure that as we're doing budget development that we never forget about this, because if there's a moment where things aren't turned on yet because we're waiting for test results, and we need the filtered bottles, we just need to have that. And then finally, our plan for decreasing the dependence on those water coolers.
Amanda, I don't think we're ever going to forget about this, but that's a very noble.
I like that everybody got thirsty while we were talking.
We go water a lot.
I just had a question for the board. So it says that for Enfield and the other school, the cost would be like $50,000 to get out the plan. So I was just, if I could ask about the money, if the board has resources to be able to enact the plan throughout all the buildings in the school district?
Not in year one.
Not in year one.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do it all first year. We're gonna budgeted, what, 180 this year?
180,000.
180
For this year?
We should probably plan a budget next year,
Okay.
so that we can keep going.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. So Jen posted the website, and as you can see, if you go to district, on that first column there, about us, the very bottom is water testing information. You can click that. All of the historical test results, any communications to families, maps, you name it. It's daunting, but it's there, okay?
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the questions.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're welcome.
And we will move on to a few other items, and one of which is a fairly long policy, 5405, Sean.
I move policy 5405 for first reading this evening.
Second?
Second by Pat.
This is a policy that's been on our radar for a little bit of time. We had a meeting with both let me get the titles correctly, my apologies.
Director of Athletics and Wellness, Director of Health Services and Wellness.
Right, Coordinator of Health Services.
Is it coordinator, right, yeah.
So we met with our two health folks to try to make sure that we're in compliance with Fed regulations. We also had Kate Reed join us at the policy committee meeting. So Moira, Samantha, Kathy, Kate, and Pat and myself have provided this policy here for you for your reading leisure. And this is a first reading, to remind folks. A couple of key things to keep in mind that we paid attention to. One was having a conversation about food and beverages available during the school day and what kinds of food and beverages would be available. One, to try to encourage the most healthiest options while still meeting Fed guidelines. We did have some conversation about, obviously, the marketing of food companies and on school premises, particularly during the school day, the role of physical activity and recess, and our nutrition promotion and education program. So some aspect of the curriculum that we provide around nutrition. So this is an all-encompassing policy. In previous iterations, it's been 3 separate policies, one on what we serve for food, one on physical activity, and one on our nutrition programs. This is all one combined policy in 5 fun pages.
Brad, please.
I know Sean's gonna love this. I'm gonna ask about grammar.
Yes. Please.
All right, so
You found some in 5 pages. That's right.
A, B, and C under 1 are the district shall, the district shall, the district shall. Then I get to D, and it says the district shall, and then there's a sentence there. This section, that makes no sense at all.
I don't know where you're talking, what,
Under
part 1, part 2?
Class party.
Part 1, item D, does, the district shall, this section applies to all school, I mean, that,
I don't think that's grammar, that seems like it.
whatever.
Well, it's
Consistent, some of it's structural.
Yeah.
And then E does not have the district shall, it leaves the pattern. And I didn't know whether you meant that or not.
It's entirely possible in the number of 345 different iterations of this policy that things have gotten moved, but we will definitely address that. There's also, for me, just so folks know, some conversation about the consistency of punctuation. Sometimes we have colons, sometimes we have semicolons, sometimes we have periods, sometimes obviously this one has no punctuation, so we will clarify that as well for our other grammar folks. I don't know if that was your second question.
Give me my next.
Well, there you go.
Select.
I'm already on that one as well.
All right,
It's got
got it.
circled over.
Thank you.
But we will make sure we get back to you on D and E for our next meeting.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a content question on the recess.
Yep.
It's further down.
Yep.
Because it's always kind of a question, I know in elementary schools, how long should recess be? And is that's something that says, maintain daily allotment of recess time, recess will complement not to be, no. So we say allotment, is there any thoughts to the minimum amount of recess that would?
We can, Sorry, is that Lydia, what's the question for Lydia or for? Some of this is
Mike and I are
specified.
like, who's gonna go? We have a consistent amount of recess at elementary schools. There is not, as far as I know, a regulation about, I'm checking over here, there's not a state regulation, but we have never, like, elementary schools have a recess time every day for kids. That is not something that is.
Is it decided at the school level or at each school?
It is decided at each school when it happens, but I think if a school decided to take away or reduce
What's our
recess.
current amount that, for like a kindergarten or a first grade, or is there?
I looked a few years ago at all the elementary buildings, and it varied. Different grades have different amounts of time, different schools have different amounts of time, but no school was less than 30 minutes.
And also, frequently at the lower grade levels, there's recess that is usually attached to lunch in some way, either right before lunch or right after lunch. And then frequently there is another recess time for younger students, getting much more movement.
I like recess. Yeah, I mean, it was the highlight for me.
It didn't actually quite enough.
I think Rob got an A in recess.
And frankly, I do like that recess shall not be used as a punishment or reward. So, and I used to do that too.
Yeah.
I want to remind folks that part of the idea about policy, and this policy in particular, will be some changes of our current district practice. I'm not saying that is one, but there'll be some other things that we'll have to be a little clear about in terms of how we engage our health and nutrition.
Sean, I just had a question about the genesis of the lung policy. You said 3 came together. Is this basic framework from, sometimes it's outside policy that we adapt? Is this 3 of ours? Is this...
My understanding is 2 things. One, it's partly a NISBA boilerplate that was then reviewed by our personnel, and Kate's had some influence about what needs to be in here. We changed a number of language. For example, we had a conversation, we felt like sometimes it was engaging, for lack of a better word, fat shaming, and we removed that language out of the policy. People should just be eating healthy. That's all we need to be saying in some regards. But there's other things that for us were a little bit more substantial in terms of do we want to actively encourage classrooms to find celebrations that don't include food? There's an example. An active encouragement of that, as opposed to what has happened previously. So I think partly what's happened is that we are meeting, Kate, please correct me if I'm wrong, some of this is, much of this is a requirement to make sure that we are in compliance with our free or reduced lunch.
That's right. So pursuant to new, and there's been a requirement for a wellness policy in place actually since 2006. Under the USDA regulations, but those were recently amended in December of 2016 to provide that the policy must contain more content and it must address in a single policy these designated areas, and it needs to address specific curriculum pieces that are addressed here, and also finally that we designate a certain person that will be overseeing wellness. So that's what kind of the minimum.
And not only a certain person will be overseeing wellness, it also mandates that the district have a wellness committee that is partly responsible for monitoring and revising our wellness policy every couple of years. There's a fairly substantial list at the end of data that is to be included. We had some debates about that, and then talking to Samantha, realizing that it looks like a lot, but we collect almost all this data anyway, and so this would be part of what we would be using, and that is part of the Fed mandate.
It is, and actually, so the mandate is not so much the committee structure, but it requires, the new mandates require that the district take affirmative steps to actually judge how effectively its wellness policy is being implemented. So these are data collection points on all of the now the mandated issues.
That's helpful. Thanks.
That is a pretty big change from what we've done in the past. More committees.
Right. First reading. Any other questions? We do vote, correct?
Mm-hmm. We do vote on first reading.
Just move second and 4. That's first reading. Anything else before the vote? All in favor? That's everyone. And Chris stepped out, so Chris did not participate. Did not want to vote on that one, obviously. So.
We'll be back. Thank
So
you.
we'll come back and we'll make Chris vote the next time. So we're going to talk about an athletic merger for UE and Trumansburg school districts for girls ice hockey.
Yeah, Ms. Little is stuck at a soccer game right now, and she just texted me to say that this merger will allow us to have a backup goalie, and we'll get up to 28 players this year, which will be the largest team we've had.
How many? 20. I think you made 20, not 28.
Not 28.
He hasn't, I know, Brad. I think you made 20.
We will have 28 rostered players.
Oh, I thought
We were at 18 and
We're 18, this is 10 kids?
So
3 kids total, I read. 2 kids from UE and 1 from Trumansburg, right?
I didn't see the
Last week we
number.
were at
She may have said 18, so.
maybe mistyped.
Yep.
I think
The
she meant
roster
18.
will be at 18 is on the Union Endicott
Okay.
form.
She mistyped.
Yep.
I would not misquote Samantha Little, so that's
Right,
no.
no.
18.
The form did say
She
18.
may have
18 makes
meant
sense.
18.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I'll
it's still be
move,
28.
I'll move the mergers with Union Endicott and Trumansburg for girls ice hockey.
Second.
Second by Moira. Sean.
I know Ms. Little's not here to have this conversation. I just want to ensure that both those applications did indicate that this is not going to displace any ICSD students
Right.
and are not positions that will threaten our current students as well.
Right, and frankly, numbers are helpful for girls hockey, women's hockey. We are one of the few districts in the area that has girls ice hockey, so good for our program and good for the other.
We're playing at Cass Park.
Playing at Cass Park and and at Lina, I do believe, correct?
I think we've got some ice time at line for both teams.
Yeah, we do.
Well, it can't, right, exactly. It can't just be the boys, the girls have the
They
other.
both play a couple games at line.
Oh, very good. Anything else? All in favor? That's everyone. Again, minus Chris. And let's move on to Title II letter to
Okay, I'm gonna
Councilman
just
Reed.
pass this around, just 'cause this is a letter. So just to give you a little background on this, the Legislative Advocacy Committee, one of the purposes of it is to deal with legislation that affects the district, either whether it's on a national level or on a state level. Is where does that legislation come home to roost for us? So we went to visit Congressman Reed's office as part of NYSBA, New York State School Board Association. They set up appointments for interested school board members to meet with different congresspeople. And we did make a trip to his office, and as part of that, NYSBA put together kind of some material on some of the national issues that are affecting school districts. One of the big issues that is affecting school districts is funding. And one of the sources of federal funding comes in different forms, but is specifically Title II, which is what this letter is about. The Title II funding the Title II funding funds things like professional development. And that's something that is very important to our district. In fact, this past year, our Title II money was actually just cut in half. And the current House bill, as well as the President's proposed budget, zeroes it out. In other words, just gets rid of it. So basically undermines the entire idea that professional development would be a purposeful thing. So we're, as you can imagine, kind of upset about that because this is a problem. Because we really value that within our district. So we collaborated with BOCES that also could be tremendously impacted by the loss of Title II monies because many of the programs they offer, the districts pay into with that money. So we've written this letter, and we felt as a joint letter between BOCES and the Ithaca City School District addressing Title II funds. Now here's the slight complication. We felt that it would be a more meaningful letter if it was signed by the board president. And in order to do that, we need to vote on it as a board. So there's a resolution to vote on the board. While we were waiting to do that, the House went ahead and voted. And they actually eliminated the funding. Whereas before it was just proposed funding, now they actually eliminated the funding. And the Senate has not voted on it. So the whole thing's not a done deal. So for that reason, I'm proposing that rather than we make some edits to the letter and still send the letter, and rather than just urge them to fund it, we now express our dismay that they didn't fund it. And so it would be, so that's what these tweaks in green are about.
Tweaks.
And then the idea also is to basically send the same letter to our senators. And, but I think we have to do a separate resolution for that. Right. But we did put in this letter that we will be sharing as our new thing, that we will be sharing our concerns with Senators Schumer and Gillibrand. So that's where we're at.
I'll move we authorize the president to send this letter to Congressman Reed and to the two senators.
Second.
Go ahead, Sean.
Just a process point, I hope, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but I hope that the Legislative Action Committee isn't writing letters without board approval, even if it's coming from the committee. Right, so I want to make sure I heard that. Fantastic. The letter jumped for me from paragraph 3 to paragraph 4, and so it just seemed to sort of just jump out of the blue, and I was wondering if paragraph 6 wouldn't be the start between paragraph 3 and paragraph 4, where you talk to me or the intended reader about the removal of Title I funds will have a direct impact on TST BOCES, and then go on to talk about TST BOCES.
Oh, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That just, it read better to me, and I think it should say at the end, signed by the board president on behalf of, depending on how the vote turns out, if it's approved, for it to say, you know, Rob Ainsley, Board of the President, on behalf of the Ithaca City School District Board of Education. I think that would be an important thing to add, so it's a full board as opposed to just the board president's voice. But I do think signing by the board president is a good tactic. Beyond that, your edits look fine to me.
And then this will also be jointly signed by BOCES.
And my only other recommendation would be grammatical, that I'm saying this, the president should be capitalized. Second paragraph, the president's proposed budget should be capitalized.
Correct. Yes.
I was reserved.
Absolutely. Other, so move seconded, so if we vote tonight, that at least covers this with the edits as we discussed, but then we have to vote on a different letter.
Well, can we make a quick amendment to the resolution? Can I offer an amendment to the resolution that we authorize the board president to send it to both Congressman Reed and our senators, and not have to bring it back from the full board again?
Does that work, Kate?
Is there a second?
Oh, we get a thumbs up from.
Second.
That's what the motion was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Right.
Right, that's what I heard, but then I heard that we had to have a separate resolution.
No, Brad's motion is okay.
Okay, I am so pleased that we have.
We'll stay within Robert's Rules of Order. I will pay more attention.
Okay, so move seconded without any other questions. All in favor? That's everyone. And Chris is back for a vote. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. So thank you. Whenever Jennifer gets this to me, I will sign it on behalf of the board. I don't often send letters out to folks on my own at all. One more item. Pat wished just to give a quick update for BOCES, and then anything else that anyone has.
Yes, I'm not a committee chair this year, but I am the school board liaison to the TST BOCES board, which includes representatives of all of the school boards within TST BOCES region. And I did want to mention that we had our first meeting, our September meeting, 15th, I think, or 14th, and our guest was our most newly appointed regent to the New York State Board of Regents, Susan Mittler, whose title is, formal title is the Very Honorable Regent Susan Mittler, and she gave a very, very detailed and informative presentation that I think should be of interest to not only school boards, but anyone who lives in a school district in upstate New York. She is the only new regent on the board this year, and those of us who knew her in the Ithaca City School District, very close to 20 years as ITA union president, will know that she has a voluminous knowledge of education, a boundless caring for the welfare of children, and a voluminous knowledge of Albany, all of which make her uniquely positioned to bring a voice to the Board of Regents in Albany that knows from the ground up how schools operate and how the rules that come down from Albany affect actual people, boards, teachers, taxpayers in the school district. A couple comments. Apparently you vote in order of seniority, so Susan's is the last voice to be heard, which is funny because that's what it always was here when she was visiting the board.
Good training.
But so she doesn't hold a lot of sway at this point because normally issues are decided before they get to her, but she does always speak out. And one very strong principle of hers is that she votes against all unfunded mandates and points out, in fact, that they are unfunded mandates. And let's just say not everyone cares what they're doing. And we have suspected this for years because they've been coming down and coming down. But she is very hopeful of, I took some notes, and now I can't. She's very hopeful of what she's seeing on the board. She says that there's a lot of politics on the Board of Regents, disproportionately benefits downstate, which is why we don't get money for preschool and things. But what she is saying is a big change on the board in the last 2 years. Putting kids first instead of money talking, and a tangible result of that is a real move, substantial move to get the big education companies out of controlling the testing. I think you'll remember when the Common Core standards came out, teachers weren't prepared, and Pearson was writing the tests, and then when the students couldn't pass the test, it was selling the district's materials so that they could teach the kids the materials to get them to pass the tests that they were writing, and to the tune of lots and lots of money. And now teachers are writing the tests and controlling the curriculum, so it's more of a grassroots movement. She was very interested to know that we have a legislative action committee on the board, and I think that if there is, she is local, she's engaged, she's knowledgeable, and I think that if we have issues to come up in Albany, I mean, obviously the Board of Regents is not the New York State Legislature, but it's a voice, and she is an ally of upstate schools, and I was happy to see her and very pleased to listen to her.
Thanks, Beth. All right.
Let me just briefly add, I am the liaison to the PTA Council, and I went to a meeting last week, and I gave the group an overview of the way in which we've got new people on board in administration and some people changing seats on the bus. Gave them a heads up about the interactive organizational chart that Mike and Dr. Brown have been working on, and they were very happy to hear about that. Also, because we do have a lot of new people, they are planning an event, I think it's going to be sometime in November, a meet and greet with the board and staff, administration, and that will probably be held before a board meeting one evening. And so that was an interesting experience.
Very good. Thanks. Anyone else? No other items on the agenda, so if we're good. I believe that we are about ready to close, and without objection, we are done. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I will be here for a house before I head out.